Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good
Mm.
evening.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
ma'am.
Dishali.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
I hope we are audible.
Yes, yes. You are.
Okay, we'll just start in 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
So I think we have around 100 people. Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
So very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining in. More and more people are joining in, but since we are already running 4 minutes late, we will start right away. So a very warm welcome to Dishari. And it's a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
introduce our esteemed facilitator for today's workshop, Ms. Dilshadi Chaudhary. She's highly accomplished clinical psychologist, holding both a master's in applied psychology from Rajabhaja Science College, Calcutta University, and an MPhil in clinical psychology from Amity University, where she was a gold medalist as well. Okay, with extensive experience in working with children, adults, and families, Ms. Chaudhary is deeply skilled in therapeutic techniques ranging from behavior modification to supportive and family therapy. Her expertise spans a wide range of psychological interventions to conducting psychometric testing, especially projective tests. So, we have invited her specially for this workshop and for the workshops, of course. And welcome, Dishari.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the kind introduction.
So with that, we start today's workshop. She's going to give you an overview of what she's going to take ahead in this particular workshop. And I hope it will be very beneficial to all of you who have joined in. We have associated together Emojar and Dishari Chaudhary. And Emojar is a platform wherein we offer online and offline trainings and counseling sessions. So over to you, Dishari. Again, a very warm welcome, and please continue with the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you. I truly appreciate you joining today, and I want to say that your time and commitment is really valuable to me. And I want to assure that this session won't be a typical lecture style session. It would be an interactive, engaging as much as possible. So, your thoughts, questions, and ideas are always welcome throughout. Let's learn from each other and grow together, shall we? Okay, let's start. Ma'am, will you share the screen, please? So for this session, I have decided I will take questions and doubts intermittently. I have fixed some time in between the whole 1 hour. And at the end, last 10 minutes, I will just be taking questions and clearing all the doubts. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, please put it in the Dropbox. I and Ria ma'am both are watching. And of course, we will pick up the questions and answer to your queries. And if it is something very lengthy and cannot be explained in a few minutes, you will all be getting handouts in your emails. So that will have a detailed explanation of everything that is there in today's workshop. So hopefully it would be very insightful and you would understand the finer nuances of conducting the test and its scoring, administration, all the fundamentals. I mean, as much as is possible in 1 hour, I hope. Okay. So first we are starting with the presentation is about thematic apperception test and child apperception test, also known as children's apperception test. So next slide, please, ma'am. Okay. First, let us come and discuss about the workshop objectives. What are we totally going to cover in this workshop? First is understanding the theoretical foundations of TAT and CAT. So if you type in ChatGPT or Google, you will get all the theories regarding this test. So we will not cover as much of theories. We will mostly focus on application based and how it can be applied on clinical settings, right? And how I have seen some previous cases, how those stories have led to a interpretation, how that has been helpful in the therapy process, more so like that. Next, purposes and settings of use. So it's also very important to know, like if a client comes, will I do TAT for each and every one of them? No, of course not, right? So we need to understand in which settings and which purposes serve the best for this particular test. Okay. Next is learning the basics of the process of TAT and CAT administration. Means we will understand how to like in which angle to sit. There are multiple nuances, finer nuances of conducting any test, and more so projective tests. So we will understand the basics of administration. We'll explore the techniques for scoring and interpretation. Of course, we will not go into much detail there because in most countries, for some clinician to be doing TAT, you need to at least have 100+ cases in which you have already done TAT, right? So it's a vast test and needs a lot of practice and learning. So in 1 hour, as much as possible, we will cover that, and more so will be there in the handouts. Next, practical applications and case examples. So some of my cases, some we will discuss, like I will show you a card and some of you might just, anyone who is willing to might just tell what you feel, what you see the story, and then we can interpret it together, you and me together. So yeah, that way. And final will be the question answer round and the doubt clarification round, as I mentioned. Okay. Next slide, please.
Dushavi, just 1 second, please.
Yeah.
Kindly, all of you mute yourself because there's a lot of static and echoes going on. Can all of you please mute yourself? Otherwise, it will be very difficult for everyone to listen to. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move on? Ma'am, next slide, please. Okay. Now, what is TAT and CAT? First, both of the tests are semi-projective tests. So what do we understand by semi-projective? First, let's understand what is projective tests. So projection is one of the defenses, right? Where our emotions, unconscious emotions, thoughts and feelings is getting portrayed on another object or even a person. Suppose you are walking on a clear sunny day and you see at the clouds, and we all must have done that. Like that cloud looks like a rabbit, or that cloud might look like a elephant. So here, what is happening? You are assigning a meaning to an ambiguous stimuli, right? So this is a projection of your unconscious thoughts and feelings on something that has no shape, definite shape or form, but everyone will see the same cloud as different. So that is a projection. So Rorschach is a projective test. However, for TAT it is a semi-projective test. Why? Because when you will see the cards, like I'm showing you one card, suppose this card, right? So here it's very clear that there is a figure and there is something in front, and it is not as vague and as ambiguous as an ink blot or as a cloud. It has a particular shape and has some structure to it. However, there is scope for projection. So that is why it is called a semi-projective test. Okay. Now, TAT was developed by Henry Murray and Christiana Morgan in 1930s, and there are a lot of versions. there is an Indian version which is very much used in context, especially for the clients who are from a lower socioeconomic status, from the villages or the rural population. Those cards are most applicable to them. That is made by Uma Chaudhary and Malhotra. So those cards are very specific to a rural setting. Maybe two farmers are working. Maybe some woman, old elderly woman, is there with a pallu or dupatta, like that. Okay. And now coming to CAT, Children's Apperception Test. Again, this is also a semi-projective test. It is devised for children and adolescents, but mostly children, because adolescents, why? It was mostly made for children of 3 to 10 years of age. However, if a child is of suppose 13 years of age, but that child is mentally retarded or has intellectual disability, right? So for that child, a TAT is not applicable. Then we will again use CAT. CAT again has two types. There is a human cards, there are animal cards. So we will discuss about that in detail little later on. It was devised by Leopold Belloc and it is based on psychodynamic principles. Ria ma'am, will you please kindly show the two types of CAT cards, the human and the animal? How?
Yes, sure. Sure.
Okay. So I'll explain what is the point of a human and what is the point of the difference between a human card and an animal card. So human cards are used for elder children, like for 6 years older to 10 years, and the animal cards are used for 3 to 6 years. Again, intellectual disability or lower cognitive functioning or any other language difficulties, those are exceptions, and for those children having those, the animal card can be used. So animal cards are used for younger children because those are animals doing some things in the cards, right? So those are more fun. Those are more easier to project to. More, they can be more creative. Whereas for the humans, the elder children will relate to the humans more rather than to an animal, right? So that is the point of uh, creating this. There are 10 animal cards and 10 human cards. Ma'am will show you right now. You will understand them.
One second.
Yes. So see, this is a human card. My voice is echoing. Yes. So this is a human card. All of the figures here, see, are humans. There are three children sitting on around a table and eating something, or like that is what I am saying. You guys might see something different. Yes. And ma'am, will you now show the animal one? Yes. If anyone has any question until now, they can put it up on the chat box. See, this is an animal card. These are more fun. These are the main figures here are mostly animals. So it is easier for younger children to associate with them and project their feelings onto these cards. So these are used for children of 3 to 6 years, and animal cards are used for children above 6 years until 10 years. Okay. Okay. Uh, yes, Mayuki, you raised your hand. Do you have any question, or was it just a mistake? Okay, I'll repeat the age of animal cards. For the animal cards, 3 to 6 years, and for the human cards, 6+ years to 10 years. Okay. Exceptions lie if the children have lower cognitive functioning, or have any language disabilities, or have any like dyslexia, dyscalculia, all of those things. So then the animal cards can be used on elder children as well. Okay. Now we will move on to the next slide. Any other questions? I am unable to see the chat box. Can we administer both human and animal cards? No, you have to choose either human or animal. There are 10 sets of human cards, 10 sets of animal cards. You cannot show both of them. It will be too much for a children, no? 10 cards only, you cannot make a child sit and be like, okay, tell stories. They will not feel very comfortable telling 20 stories. 10 cards only, if you get, that's a lot. Yes, these cards are in black and white only. Okay, ma'am. Shall we move on to the next slide, please? Okay. So what does TAT assess? So why is TAT so important, and why would you need to do and learn such a complicated test? Well, it's not very complicated, at least not after today. I hope you'll believe that. Okay. So first is the key needs of the individual can be understood. So if a client is coming to you and you don't really understand what are the needs of the person, does the client need have the need for validation, have the need for love, have the need for succurrence, have the need for harm avoidance? What is the main needs, underlying dominant needs that is driving that individual? To understand that, it's very important. Then is to understand emotional maturity and stability. Means when we will do the interpretation, we will see from each card, we will understand if the ego of the person, if the super ego of the person is adequate or inadequate, if the person is being able to deal with the conflict, if the person is able to use proper defenses, mature defenses. So those emotional stability and maturity we will get to understand from the test. Then the most important thing is the relationship, not only social interactional relationships like interpersonal relationships with family, with friends, but also relationship with oneself. Like, how do I see myself? How is my self image, my self esteem, my self confidence, right? And also, of course, many of our clients come who have family issues, or who have marital conflicts, or who have issues with friendships, especially if there is a client with maybe suppose a borderline personality disorder. They will have in conflicts in social and problems with social adjustment in multiple areas, right? So it will be useful then. Then it is also very useful for understanding gender orientation. Some cards specifically give hints about if the person is interested in the same sex or the opposite sex. Next, past sexual abuse history can be elicited, current belief system of the client, and if there is any repetitive trends or patterns of personality. If they are falling in the same automatic loop again and again, if they're using the same immature defenses again and again. So this personality, structuring and personality dynamics, we will understand from this test. Okay. Ma'am, next slide, please. Yes, you will get a handout, but I would still suggest to keep a pen and paper and just write the important points. Like, you can just even write the points from the PPT because it's very comprehensive. I've tried to do that. Okay. Next, in what settings are these tests done? So this set, will this PPT, okay, so I cannot read all the questions simultaneously while I'm presenting. Okay, so I'll answer all your questions in a time that I have allotted for question answers. Okay. Okay. So in what settings are these tests done? The tests are done in diagnostic clarification. Like, if you are not clear if the person has this disorder or some other disorder, this test will give a lot of clarification regarding that. It will help understand deeper underlying issues. It will help understand the conflicts in interpersonal relationships. It's very useful for clients having personality disorders. Forensics. Now, this part here is the interesting catch of it. So forensics, like if there is some case of forgery, or suppose if you are interested in crime series and all of those shows, you will see that many of the convicted criminals plead innocence on the basis of that they committed the act because of their insanity, because they were on their psychotic phase, and so they plead innocence of the crime, and that is when this test comes into the play. TAT and Rorschach are admissible in the court of law. So for any criminals who plead innocence on the basis of their insanity, on those clients or those criminals, quote unquote, we can do TAT. That's very useful in such situations. Of course, it is also useful like in clinical disorders like anxiety and depression for not only understanding the intensity, like BDI-2 is enough for understanding the intensity of depression, but it will get you to, you will understand the source, like which need is not getting adequately met. So this depressive thoughts are surfacing. That you will understand from this test. Next, self-assessment of clinicians. That's a very important thing. I myself have my TAT done, and I've seen where are my gray areas. So I would suggest, like, if you want to see client for a long time, if that is what you want to do, so you need to be very aware of your gray areas. We all have our gray areas, right? So from this TAT, we will understand which areas are our gray areas and how to be, we can work upon those areas and do full justice to our client, because that's our job, right? So self-assessment for clinicians, TAT is also a good test for that. Okay, next slide, ma'am. Okay, now coming to the structure of first TAT. So then TAT, there are for Uma Chaudhary and Malhotra, that is a different set of cards. We are not talking about that. We are talking about Murray's cards. Okay. So Murray's cards have 31 cards and one of them is blank. And the selection of cards is based on age, gender, and context. More about this we will discuss in some time. And for CAT, there are two versions as we already discussed, CAT A and CAT H. And both of them have 10 cards each. Okay. Ma'am, next slide, please. Okay. Now we'll come to instructions. We have done all the theoretical parts, like as much as was necessary for the basics. Others you will get on handout, you will get on Google, you will get a ChatGPT. So let's come to the actual administration part, which is more interesting, I suppose. At least that is how it is to me. So what are the instructions that you would give to your client when they are coming for TAT? Okay. Now see, TAT has many manuals. It can be done according to many different people. Like Murray has his own manual. Again, Uma Chaudhary and Malhotra have their own manual. And Belak has his own manual. And there are multiple such other manuals. Okay. So instructions I have put before discussing all of those, because instructions for all of these manuals are the same. Some have some extra information, some extra additional instruction, but most of the manual systems have this common instruction, which I'm going to read it out to you now. I'm going to show you a set of cards, one card at a time. On each card, there are some pictures. You are required to make a story revolving around that picture. You need to tell me what has happened in the past, what is happening right now, and what will happen in the future. Make the stories based on the first thought that comes to your mind. There is nothing right or wrong in it. Okay. Now, next slide, please. Okay. Now, coming to the procedure. As we were discussing, there are three types of manuals mainly that are used internationally. The most famous ones are Murray's manual, Belak's manual, and Uma Chaudhary and Malhotra's manual, specifically for the Indian context. So Murray's manual focuses on needs, stress, and themes. Needs means what are the needs of the client. Stress means the environmental constraints, like what are the problems and conflicts that are coming to the client from the environment, and the basic themes that the stories are revolving around. Okay. Belak's manual has a lot of more structuring and lot of more detail in addition to these need, stress, and themes. All those are definitely there, but in addition, it has story content, it has hero identification, it has outcome and resolution, it has emotional tone. Okay, someone is telling me what is stress. Okay, we'll discuss more about that in some time. You will understand it better. Just give me some minutes, okay? Uma Chaudhary and Malhotra's manual is specifically for Indian context, and they have a different set of interpretation, different manuals. So we are not going to talk about that today. And then there is also qualitative interpretation and quantitative interpretation. So what is qualitative? Qualitative is we're understanding the content of the story. कि किसके बारे में सबसे ज्यादा बात हो रहा है? What is the main theme? What is the main emotion? How do they see their future? How do they see the contemporary figures? How do they see the authority figures? As a quality, we are analyzing. Okay. But for quantitative interpretation, we are seeing how many times the same need is coming again and again. So, for example, card 1 may be need for succurrence आया था, card 3 may be there is need for succurrence, card 8 also had need for succurrence, and among all those needs, need for succurrence is the highest. Succurrence means need for love and validation. To say in the terms of TAT, we call it need for succurrence. Okay. Even need for achievement. If someone has need for achievement coming again and again, and we're counting how many times it is coming. So whichever need is the highest in number, we understand that is the most dominant need. Simply just mathematics. That's quantitative interpretation. Today we'll focus mostly on qualitative interpretation and Belak's manual because again why we will discuss right now. Ma'am, please next slide. Yes. So this chart will help you understand why I have chosen Belak's manual for today's session. I have personally done all three of the, I have read all three of the manuals, I have administered all three, but I find Belak to be the most structured and useful because of this following reason. So Belak's manual is clear, structured, guidelines are very specific and they focus on specific elements, whereas for Murray's system, they are very abstract and open-ended with broad psychological concepts. Clinical application also, Belak's manual has strong clinical focus that is useful for diagnosis and treatment. Whereas for Murray, it is more theoretical and very hard to translate into practice. I mean, you need to be very well versed. You need to have a lot of years of experience in your pocket in order to understand Murray's system of interpretation. Again, for Belak's manual, there has to be a hero, जिसके बारे में सबसे ज्यादा बात हो रहा है in the story. That person is the hero. But for Murray's system, there is no specific focus on protagonist. You don't need to have a hero. Everyone is the hero. Emotional tone, उस पे भी focus Belak पे ही होता है. There is a lot of focus on what is the emotional tone and conflict क्या क्या आ रहा है, how the person is solving. I mean, how the hero is solving the conflict. But in Murray's system, they only focus on needs stresses and no focus on emotional outcomes. Again, Belak's manual is very user friendly, suitable for less experienced clinicians as well because it's very structured. So उतना दिमाग नहीं लगाना पड़ता कि अच्छा बहुत psychodynamic principles सारे रट के all the differences I have to know and then only I can interpret. ऐसा that's not like that because I'll also show you Belak has a very specific analysis sheet. It has like multiple choice questions. There are many options there. So you can just select. So that's easier and much more user friendly. Murray's system requires deep psychodynamic knowledge and Belak's is also very objective and Murray's is more subjective and variable in nature. Okay, ma'am. Next slide, please. Administration. Now coming to the interesting part, how are we supposed to administer TAT? First, you need to be sitting face to face, but not like directly face to face. You need to be at an angle of around 45 degrees, slightly angled. Now, why this angle needs to be there? Because if the client decides that I will not have eye-to-eye contact with the clinician all throughout telling the story because that is hindering my imagination to tell the story, then the client should have that much freedom to do that. If the client is right in front of you and constantly looking towards your face or towards your eyes, there is a chance that they will not get that freedom of imagination because they are focusing on you, right? So they should have that freedom to choose to look at you. So that's why we sit at an angle so that they can choose to look at us or even look in front somewhere else. Okay. Next, distraction-free environment, which is very given for most of the tests. You have to have a very distraction-free environment because I'll get back to your question. I could not read. At the end of the session, we will have the question answer round. Don't worry. Distraction-free environment, why? Because of course you have to imagine a story. So you have to have a quiet, peaceful, calm environment. Materials 10 to 12 cards. Now you'll say, ma'am, you said there are 31 cards plus one blank card. So why 10 to 12 cards? just because it's practical and just because Belak said we can do so. Because see, for a client telling 31 stories uske upar inquiry, that gets very tiresome. We have to be also very practical with how we are doing the testing. So only 10 to 12 cards is enough according to Belak, and as we are following Belak's manual, we will abide by that. Again, recording device, uh, pen and paper, all of those of course need to be there. Even if you don't have a recording device, that's fine, but you then have to be very have to write it verbatim. You cannot miss anything. Like even if there is a pause, you have to write pause, then you have to write sigh, you will have to write um, feeling uncomfortable, like whatever you are seeing, those observations also need to go on paper, because when you will be interpreting, you will not remember what you saw then. So even if there is a pause, that also says a lot about the client, so you will write it, the pause, then sigh. Okay, just side notes for yourself, your own benefit. Okay, then presenting one card at a time with minimal interruption. Of course, you cannot present 5 cards at a time. You will have to present one card at a time. Again, writing verbatim. Audio recording is helpful, because if you can't write verbatim, you can again hear it while interpreting. That might be easier. And focus on non-verbal behaviors. Of course, you have to see if the leg is constantly shaking or not. That are just, even for mental status examination, we do this, right? So we need to do that. Okay, Sita Basu is asking what I could not see again. We will come to your question. Just maybe take a notebook or copy, write your questions. At the end of the session, you ask me, I'll answer all of them, because it's disappearing very fast. I cannot read the question. Okay. Next is managing clients' resistance. So, fun story. For one of my clients, just for this card only, he was telling, हाँ इसमें तो क्या ही स्टोरी है, एक बच्चा है बैठा हुआ है और एक सामने कुछ तो पड़ा हुआ है, पीछे का बैकग्राउंड ब्लैक है, बस हो गया. That was his story. So that says the client is resistant on responding. So he is just describing what the picture to you. So then you need to be very empathic and assertive. Ki nahi, yeah, I understand what you are seeing, but you are supposed to make a story. Yes, I can also see that there is a child sitting there. You tell me what the child is thinking. इससे पहले क्या हुआ? What is going to happen after this? Because this test will only be useful to you. If you are not feeling like answering to this card, I can show you another card. Or if you are not comfortable answering this particular photo is not comfortable to you, I'll give you another card. But that is how you manage client's resistance, and client's resistance also says a lot about the client, right? So we will note that down to कि card 1 did not respond, said feeling uncomfortable, or said I don't like the picture, क्योंकि कुछ तो negative transference picture के साथ हुआ है. So that also you need to note down. Next is follow up sessions. एक सेशन में करना is ideal. You have to do TAT in one session. ऐसा किसी ने नहीं कहा. You cannot be like in a hurry. Okay, done, बहुत टाइम हो गया, चलो जल्दी बोलो. ऐसा नहीं कर सकते. You will give the client his or her the full freedom and time, as much as time is required. So if in one session you cannot finish, you can do it in the next session. And then maintaining ethical standards, that's a very obvious. You have to have informed consent, you have to have confidentiality, and etc. Okay, ma'am, next slide please. Okay, now interpretation and scoring. This is a chart that is prepared by me from all of the manuals I have come across. This is accumulated one that I did, which I found to be the most useful. Okay, so before coming to this interpretation and scoring, I will say a story. Okay, I'll just make up a story and I'll say to you. And if any one of you are interested, maybe just raise your hand, and then I'll ask you to tell what do you see in that card. Like, let's make it a little interactive. Yeah. So I'll just show you one card, and yeah, then I'll just. Okay. Is this card visible? Okay. Okay. So this card, whatever you are seeing, I would ask Shantanu has raised, many people have raised their hands, but Shantanu is a very close person to me. I would like Shantanu to say what you are seeing so that we can just have, a discussion right here, like the interpretation we can do all together.
Yeah, so hi, as I can see in the picture, there's a little boy, and in
Okay.
front I can see a violin. And as much as I can think, I think he's like, he looks disappointed or worried. Maybe
Hmm.
he has a show or a performance, and
Okay.
maybe like he's not ready or like not confident or something like that.
Okay, okay, okay. So I understood. Now for inquiry, I will have to ask her some questions because she has not said much about what is going to happen in the future, what is happened in the past, and what the boy is thinking and feeling currently. So Shantanu, would you please elaborate a bit on those
Oh, okay.
parts?
Um, It can be so that maybe he is not the one who has decided to perform. Maybe he has been asked by a teacher or a guide to perform a particular note, which he might not be well prepared for, and maybe that's a building pressure on him. Or it can also be so that he has performed that particular piece in the past and has experienced an embarrassing. He had have an embarrassing experience or a like a bad experience. So maybe he's worried about that, and he knows that maybe it will not end up well this time too. So yeah.
Okay, okay. So thank you so much, Anthony, for your contribution. It was really helpful. And many people are saying that they cannot see the card. Okay, so what I can do is I'll send a picture to ma'am and she can share it, or I have to disable my background for that, I think. No? Is 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 this visible like this? Yeah, people are saying yes. Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, ma'am, can you just please share the screen and open that interpretation page where we left so that everyone can see that? Mm, I cannot see. Okay, so before ma'am shows, let's just discuss. You can write in the comment box. What do you think is the hero of the story? Like, who do you think is the hero of the story from what she said? Okay, the first one, let me on. Yes, very good, very good, very good. Everyone everyone who answered. The young boy is the hero of the story. The little boy is the hero of the story. So first hero identification done. Next, we will see how the environment is perceived as. That's why I wanted that chart, which will soon come. I think ma'am is working on that. Um, Hero perceived as, and first of all environment perceived as, hero perceived as, both of them are here important. Hostile, yes. Stressful, all of those are applicable. Tensed, anxious, melancholic. Environment is cannot be melancholic, but the hero definitely. Hero is perceived as all of the things that you have said. Yes, helpless, tense, anxious, right. That is the first thing we can do. And next we will come to the environment perceived as. Environment is perceived as stressful, unstable, all of the. Very good. Thank you so much guys for being so interactive. Yes, environment is perceived as stressful, competitive, even dominant. Someone said that might be also applicable. Okay, all of these are applicable, but mostly the same underlying tone should be there. Yes. For needs, what do we think the needs are here for the child? There is a need for achievement, right? He wants to succeed. He wants to play it well, get the hits. Yes, need for validation, Then there is need for succurrence, as we were mentioning. Succurrence means love, affection from close ones, approval, support. Yes, very good. All of the needs are getting elicited. Acceptance, need to excel. Yes, need to excel. Of course, we can. There is, see, these are the terms for the same need. Need for succurrence. You will just read about that. All of the things will get covered under it. Need for succurrence and need for achievement overall both covers the things. Okay, now the figures who are introduced. What are the figures that are introduced in the story? Figures that are introduced means except for the little boy. There is a teacher that was talked about. There was a tuition teacher, someone that she talked about, right? So that is school teacher, home tutor. Those are the other people or the other figures that are introduced. Now the figures are perceived to be as, next topic is figures perceived as. They are perceived as authoritative, right? They are perceived as dominant. They are perceived as, yes, violin teacher. Yes, yes, yes. So authoritative and dominant would be mostly covering what the teachers, how she explained. I hope I'm understanding right from her story. uh, Next, anxiety. What are the kinds of anxiety that that the child is feeling here? Of insult, of embarrassment, of failure, of loss of love, of helpless, yes, overpoweredness, helplessness. Yes, those are the anxieties that the child is feeling, right? What are the conflicts that the child is facing? There is a conflict. See, the child is sitting and thinking, right? So the child wants to do well, but again, the child is not really practicing. So there is activity, but there is also passivity. So there is a conflict, right? Activity versus passivity. There is also a need for achievement, but he is afraid of failure. So there is a conflict between that, failure versus achievement. Okay. Then yes, there is also avoidance conflict. Okay. Anxiety में performance anxiety जाएगा. Performance anxiety, anticipatory anxiety, that will be in performance. Conflict will have something versus something that is happening in the story itself. Means the hero itself is suppose saying once कि हाँ नहीं मुझे घर में रहना अच्छा नहीं लगता, but after a little while he is saying that but I really like to stay with my parents. So there is a need for autonomy, but there is also a need for succurrence. So there is a conflict. Okay. So that is how we write conflict, that versus that, like failure versus achievement, activity versus passivity, need for succurrence versus need for dominance. Okay, the conflicting needs we write with a versus in middle. Then there is ego defenses. What are the defenses that here is being used from the normal defenses that we know about? Okay, no one is no one is sure, I am guessing. Okay, so here, Shantani, would you just say me once the story in short so that people can listen once again to what you said?
Yeah, I said that maybe it is so that he has an upcoming performance for which he has been asked by his teacher to play a particular part or a piece, but he is not prepared actually, and his teacher also does not know that, but he has to do it. And it
Hmm.
can also be so that in the past that he has experienced a similar kind of situation where he had to like perform this particular piece and he failed, and that is an embarrassing or like traumatizing experience for him. So
Right.
he's worried and he does not know what to do.
Right, right. Yes, somebody said repression. That's a very good answer. Thank you. Yes, he is kind of repressing. To some extent, we can also say that he is in, what to say, distortion can be one defense here, because he is distorting the reality a bit to serve his own purpose. Means he is thinking that if I worry, then maybe I will perform well, but that is really not helping. So that can be done. In some stories, it will also be the case that no defenses can be elicited, but that doesn't mean that that is an invalid story. From the other cards, you will get defenses. not all the stories will always have all of the things that you're looking for. Like all stories will not have ego defenses, not from this superego is really not very understandable. Like if the superego is lenient or it is harsh, we cannot really understand that. So superego we really cannot comment on for this particular story that Shantanu said. Ego integration is, we would say, inadequate because, of course, he is feeling conflicted, he is having anxiety. If he was very happy go lucky and everything was, very well balanced in the photo, well integrated, then we would say that ego is adequate. But from the story, we can understand that ego is not adequate. But the future is again seen to be hopeful because he thinks like maybe in the future he can do it, or he will be able to do it, like that. Okay, so this is just a rough example as to as how we can do an interpretation. In the next slide itself, I have shared one story where I have written it down so that it will be easier to refer. I can understand from a story. Not every one of you could, register it because I could not write it. I wanted to be interactive. But for the next slide, I have written it. Uh, Ria ma'am, are you still here? I am not sure that she is still here. Actually, I do not have the
It's not
control.
visible, Dishari, because I'm sharing the screen already. Can someone tell me whether it's visible or not?
It is
Yes, ma'am.
visible.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Thank you. Dishari, you're mute.
Oh, sorry, I cannot see the screen, so it must be something on my end. Uh, yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry, ma'am. It was my bad.
It's okay, no issues.
Okay, case study. So see here, I have written a case. It is for the same picture. This very picture in which Shantanu replied, the same picture where the boy is sitting with a violin. Okay, in this picture, a young boy is sitting and thinking how he will play good music for his parents on their upcoming anniversary. He wants to play something special, but he is unable to figure out how he will play that. So he is just sitting and thinking. He is thinking so much because he doesn't want to upset his parents. He is probably also thinking that he doesn't need to practice. He can play extremely well right there on stage during the showtime because he believes he is extremely talented. Okay. So this was a case that one of my clients presented me due to privacy reasons. Of course, I will not mention the name. And then for inquiry, I asked, what do you think happened in the past? Because that past is not being elicited from the story, right? So answer was his parents wanted him to be a successful musician, so often criticized him for not playing his instrument well in the past. Next, what do you think will happen in future? Answer was he will become a successful musician in future and make his parents proud. Next, I asked how is the boy currently feeling? The answer was he is feeling a bit stressed for the upcoming event. Okay. So basically, first the client tells the story that at that time you don't interfere. You let the client tell the whole story at one stretch. And when the client finishes, and then you see that the past, the future, the feelings and emotions are not elicited in the story, only that is the time when you do an inquiry. If you feel like that the client has uh, already said everything, then you can just not do an inquiry. Okay. So here, the hero is the young boy. The needs are succurrence and achievement. Ma'am, does the client speak out the story or write it down? No, the client says the story. That is what I said in the verbatim as well. The client says the story and you write it down verbatim, or you record it on a recording device, or you do both. You record as well as you write. Okay. So the hero is here is a young boy. The needs are need for succurrence, need for achievement. There are multiple other needs. I just mentioned a few of them for easier understanding. Environment is perceived as critical. Figures introduced are parents Attitude towards figures, authority figures, is fearful compliance because his parents want him to be successful and again criticize, so he wants to do well. So fearful compliance. Con- Attitude towards contemporary figures not elicited. As I mentioned, not everything will be elicited from one card. Next is conflict, activity versus passivity, autonomy versus conformity. Why activity versus passivity? He's sitting and thinking that, okay, I will play well, I will play well, I want to play well. But again, he's not really practicing in the story that he says. And autonomy versus conformity, why? Autonomy because he says, okay, I don't need to practice, I will do well, I am good enough, etc., etc. But conformity again, he wants to conform to his parents' wishes. Like he wants to do well, he wants to be a successful musician. He himself wants that or not, that's not mentioned here, but he wants to do it for his parents. Defenses distortion. Again, why did I write distortion? Because he says here, see that he doesn't need to practice, he can play extremely well right there on stage during the showtime because he believes he's extremely talented. So this is a distortion of reality. Of course you need to practice in order to play well. Even the best of singers need to do their practice every day in before going to stage. So that doesn't happen ki, okay, I'm thinking so I will do well. So that is a distortion of reality that is happening. Often happens for people with some underlying narcissism where they believe that they are talented, which is happening for this child. So see, the personality traits are also getting elicited as we are doing this. Although I have written only one or two, there can be multiple needs, multiple defenses, multiple conflicts and anxieties from this story itself. Ego is inadequate. Okay, superego is harsh. Harsh why? Because he says that he will have to make his parents proud. So there's a lot of pressure that is that internally also he's putting upon himself. Ego is inadequate because again there are a lot of conflicts, not all very well dealt. There is anxiety, and future is hopeful and optimistic because he says that in the future he will become a successful musician and he will make his parents proud. So the future ultimately is hopeful and optimistic. Okay, ma'am, next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So that was my presentation. If you have any more questions, because I will give you 10 minutes for all question answers and doubt clarifications. But even if you have any more questions, these are my social handles. You can email me, you can text me, you can just drop a message. I am free to answer them. And of course, Emojar is always there. You will get handouts. Um, okay, now I will take questions. Hmm. Okay, many people have raised their hands. Ma'am, did you see any specific question that you think I need to answer?
I was just going through it. A lot of questions already in the chat box.
Okay.
Maybe you can just quickly tell them like there are 30 cards plus one. So you can just tell them which one to use when just on an overview basically.
Okay, okay. Someone is okay, ma'am. Sure, I'll get to that. Someone is asking, yes. What are contemporary figures? Sorry, I never mentioned. Contemporary figures are if someone is talking about a friend or a partner or someone of the same age, like contemporary age. Okay, so that is contemporary figures. The attitude that is elicited towards them, whether they are feeling jealous or whether they are feeling love towards the figures or whether they are feeling hatred, all of those emotions towards the contemporary figures are also important for the interpretation. Okay. Someone asked if we can have more than one story. Yes, of course you can have more than one story. That would be very useful for your interpretation. That time only for that that chart that I showed you, card one has only one column, right? So suppose there are two responses for card one, make two columns under card one for one story and for the other story. It's all right. You should be always willing to take more stories because that only gives you more information to interpret on that. Okay, and okay, yes, good question is which cards, as ma'am also asked, which cards to administer for which age group and how to select cards for administering. Okay, So if you have a pen and paper in front of you, I would like you to write few of the important cards. I will show you, and simultaneously I would ask you to write which of the cards are useful for administering. First is, wait, I'll remove my background so that you can see the card. Pardon me for being not very technologically advanced. I was learning TAT then when I should have learned how to change background. 1 second. One second, I'll change my background in just. Hmm. Are the cards visible now? Please, can you give me some thumbs up or something? Okay, okay. Thank you. So this is card number 1, the card that uh, was being shown. This is card number 1. This is the self card. That is very important to administer. I would suggest this card to be included for every of your clients. Okay. Number 1, self card. Number 2, here is the family card. Can you see? Yes, I think it's visible. It's the family card number 2. Card number 2 is also needs to be administered. It would tell about social interaction. Card not visible. I'm so sorry. Is it visible now? Okay, okay. Okay. Card number 2, family card. Card number 3, GF, is usually for girls and females, and 3BM is for males and boys. B stands for boys, M stands for M. However, only for card number 3BM, it is an exception where 3BM is used for both the genders, boys and males, as well as females and girls, because it's a very useful card for assessing depression. This is 3BM. Card 3BM, where a person is slouched. Okay. Next card is 3GF, which is for girls and females, but not very useful for assessing depression. 3BM would be the one that I would use. I would recommend because it gives much better interpretation. Okay. If the cards are not very visible, don't worry. Those cards are available all online. You can just note down the cards, and via the cards gender wise different. It is because so that they can relate with the main figure. So suppose you are giving a female card to a man, the person hero identification will not be as well. When you will give a male figure to a male client, they can identify with the figure much more than a female picture. So that is the only reason. And age wise, age का तो कुछ नहीं है. Age तो 10 के ऊपर से you can give TAT to people with proper cognitive functioning and no language difficulties as such. Okay. Okay. This I told you until 3GF, right? 4 is important for male female relationships. This one, that is also important. Okay. 5, it gives paranoid fears of attack. This card, paranoid fears of attack. Okay, I'm not showing the cards because I'm just telling you the numbers. You can see them from a slide, or I can just send you the resources. Card number 5. Card number 6, BM, is mother's relationship with son. If that needs to be elicited, this should be included. Again, I'm repeating, 6BM, mother's relationship with son. 6GF is father's relationship with daughter. If that needs to be elicited, you need to give 6GF, father's relationship with daughter. 7BM is attitude towards authority figures. Okay. 7BM, attitude towards authority figures. And then all of these cards, ऐसा उल्टा करोगे तो हो जाएगा क्या? Blank card. It is card number 16 is a blank card and should be given to all clients. Blank card is same instruction. Whatever you are seeing, you tell me a story revolving around it. Maximum people will see, I see nothing. So you will say, no, you have to imagine a story here. Here it is your blank canvas. You have to imagine what you are seeing here. Okay. So I think I gave a list of 10 cards: 1, 2, 3 BM, 3 GF, 4, 5, 6 BM, 6 GF, 7 BM, 16. There are specific cards for aggression. There are specific cards for different cards have different purposes, different elicit that they elicit different information. So that would be a long, lengthy session. Sometime we will do that too in a whole, full workshop maybe. But today, I think the time is almost over. Um, Ma'am, do you think I should take any more questions?
I think more or less we have covered all parts of it.
Yes.
I feel the audience will also benefit from whatever we discussed, because there's a lot more to it. Of course, projective techniques are not so easy, but we wanted to give an overview, and it was a fantastic overview, what I feel personally, because all of the details and the way you've projected it on the screen holistically, it is really commendable. And I hope all of you agree with me as well. So, any specific question which you feel needs addressing? But I feel this was more like a holistic approach. So, more or less, all questions are covered.
Thank you so much, ma'am. If anyone has any specific question that, like, there's a burning question that they want to be answered, please unmute yourself and ask, because there are so many people raising hands. I cannot keep a count whom to answer.
Yes, ma'am. Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course, Ishika. Go on.
So I had a doubt that, as you said, that for one story, it is not necessary that we have to complete every domain, right? But when the test is done, like when we all the cards, for example, we have administered every card, so it is necessary to interpret every domain after all the cards.
Yes, of course. See, all of the domains would be useful for your understanding and analysis. Like, Puras, if you leave defenses for all of the cards, then how will you understand which defense the client is actually using? And it is not possible कि any of the cards कोई भी defense नहीं आया. ऐसा हो नहीं सकता, आएगा. Okay. But it is also not mandatory कि for one card अगर कुछ आया भी नहीं है तो कुछ करना है, इसलिए you are माने forcing your response into it. That's not required. But for all the cards, it will never be like ki the defenses section or the conflict section or the needs section is completely blank. Something to will get elicited. Okay. And even if it's a very resistant client and not giving much responses and not, very much interested in the test, so is purposefully keeping silent, then it's a very different matter. Then you have to choose a separate test, right? Because this is a test of making stories. If the client is just quiet the whole time, of course, the whole columns, all the things will be blank, and then it will not be useful. Then you have to select some other test. Did I answer
Thank
your
you.
question, Ishika? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh. Any other question? What duration
Ma'am,
training
can
is
I ask
required?
one question?
Yes, yes,
Hello.
Vaishali, sure. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello. Ma'am, suppose now the client just gives us two sides of the stories, but those are contradictory. And how we
Hmm.
handle about it? Like maybe the client may say, okay, the boy maybe, or maybe he's happy but he's tired, or maybe he may say that no, he may be sad or and tired, something of that sort. So in that case, how do we do the interpretation?
That would actually lead to a very useful interpretation, because that would give rise to a lot of conflict. You will understand that the boy is happy but again sad. So there will be many conflicts that you will understand कि अच्छा इसका autonomy भी है लेकिन occurrence भी है, लेकिन again dominance का need भी है, लेकिन again need to play भी है, need to achievement भी है, लेकिन अगर you will understand there is a lot of contradiction that exists in the client. क्योंकि हीरो तो क्लाइंट का ही आइडेंटिफिकेशन है ना हीरो के साथ. सो बेसिकली हीज conflicts are only getting projected into the hero. So when there are, maybe he is happy but again he might be sad, that also gives a lot of understanding about the interpretation. It gives a lot of understanding about the conflicts and the defenses that the client is using. How to do that, that's a good question. That for that, a lot of training is required, a lot of experience is required. From today's 1 hour session, it's not possible at all to guide you how to do that in this short time, but soon maybe we'll do a workshop where we can address these issues. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dishari, thank you so much. It's almost time. And as you said, that we'll be organizing more workshops. We are already on the lookout for Rorschach with you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited for the rest of you. We'll keep on coming up with a lot of more, workshops and interesting things. So stay tuned, and we would love if you could just drop in your comments, if you can drop in your feedback as to how the session was. That will motivate all of us to come up with more sessions. So thanks a lot, Dishari, for taking out time and coming and joining us.
Thank
Uh,
you, ma'am, for
I
giving
had a
me
lovely
this
experience.
opportunity.
Most
Thank
welcome.
you. And thank you everyone for being such an interactive crowd. Really, it means a lot. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in the Rorschach workshop. That will be much detailed with much more time, and I can answer all your questions. So yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Have a lovely evening. And we'll send you the recording so that you can watch it again and learn from it. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll send the resources and the recordings. Give me some time because it takes a little bit of time to upload itself. So once it's done, we'll be sending you in a day or two. And for the certificates, we'll send you a short assignment, because without assignments, we have seen we are just distributing certificates and people are not learning anything. So that would be, I think, more ethical. So once you submit the assignments, we'll be sending you the e-certificates via mail. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
ma'am. Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.